So I will read the opening words again by Maureen Killoran, titled In Need of Healing. Welcome you who come in need of healing, you who are confused or have been betrayed. Welcome with your problems and your pain. Welcome to your joys and your wonderings. Welcome your need to hope, your longing for assurance. Instead of answers, here may you find safety for your questions. Instead of promises, may you find community for your struggles. People with hands and hearts to join you in engaging the challenges and changes of our day. Steve will light our chalice this morning here in the sanctuary, and I invite you to light your own chalice and place it where it can be seen by all of us if you are able. With full hearts, we affirm our relationships with one another. We recognize our agency and our connective power, and we accept our responsibility to be bold and courageous. We light this chalice, symbol of all that we are, all that we have done together, and all that we will be as our shared ministry encourages those within and beyond our walls. Before we sing the first hymn, let me remind our remote participants to leave yourselves muted and our in-house participants to remain masked. However, we want you and whoever is with you to sing with Mary and Jan as big and loud as you like. Make it a joyous experience. Please stand if you are able and join in singing the opening hymn, Oh What a Beautiful Morning, by Rodgers and Hammerstein.
There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. The corn is as high as an elephant's eye, and it looks like it's climbing clear up to the sky. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way. All the cattle are standing like statues. All the cattle are standing like statues. They don't turn their heads as they see me bye-bye. But a little brown maverick is winking its eye. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way. All the sounds of the earth are like music. All the sounds of the earth are like music. The breeze is so busy it don't miss a tree. And a little pink willow is laughing at me. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way. Oh, what a beautiful day.
Very nice. Thank you. Please be seated. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist community of Cambria. We are glad you have joined us today. We acknowledge that our UUCC sanctuary stands on land that has been and is still inhabited by coastal Chumash and Salinan indigenous peoples whose ancestors primarily lived in the San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. As a Unitarian Universalist community, we celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led community inviting speakers from different religious traditions and spiritual or scientific backgrounds to speak at our pulpit. We encourage presentations covering a variety of topics and areas of interest to our community that connect with the UU 7 principles. Today's service centers around the first principle, We affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Reverence and respect for human nature is at the core of Unitarian Universalist faith. We believe that all the dimensions of our being carry the potential to do good. We celebrate the gifts of being human, our intelligence and a capacity for observation and reason, our senses and ability to appreciate beauty, our creativity, our feelings and emotions. We cherish our bodies as well as our souls. We can use our gifts to offer love, to work for justice, to heal injury, to create pleasure for ourselves and others. My name is Janet Cooper, and I am your worship associate this morning. I would like to extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors. We're glad that you joined us this morning. If you're not on our mailing list, please visit the UUCC website at uuccambria.org so that we can keep you informed about all of our activities. And please check out What's Happening, a weekly e-blast sent to all members and friends. This is a great way to keep up with the latest news in this community. And a reminder, if you wish to see this or any of the past Zoom services again, recordings of these services can be found on the UUCC website and Facebook as well. The membership committee invites non-members to consider joining this community. Please contact Diane DeMarco or a person on the board if you are interested. Thank you. So again, good morning and welcome to everyone. The affirmation is both a recognition of the nature of this community as well as a promise we make and aspire to. Let us now recite the affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. We set aside this time for any short announcements that would be of interest to our UU community members and friends. Please keep your items short and to the point. For any items that need more explanation, please call or email the person after the service to be respectful of everyone's time. If you have an announcement, please raise your hand. When Diane or I call your name, please stand or unmute yourself, then speak. Do we have any announcements in the sanctuary? Kathy, you're gonna have to come, this mic is out of commission, so come here.
Thanks to everyone, we made $780 at the impromptu garage sale.
Jan?
Yes. Andy, Randy, can you turn me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. On behalf of the Scholarship Committee, we have our meeting this week to make our final determination. So if you have any leftover money and you need to get rid of it, this would be the time to do it this week, please, so we can reward these incredible, needy, and wonderful students. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Do we have any more announcements?
I have one.
Okay.
Okay, this is Randy, and tomorrow at 5 o'clock on Zoom, we will commence with another worship committee meeting. So if you're on the committee, please be there via Zoom. And if you're interested in joining us, which I encourage, anybody else, just get in touch with me via email or text or a phone call, and I'll get you the link. All right, tomorrow at 5 o'clock, worship committee.
Okay, thank you. I believe we're done in the sanctuary. Diane, do we have any announcements in Zoom land?
Well, let's see. I don't see any hands. I have one announcement though. Oh yes, we do have another hand. So I'll give you my announcement first. We had a heartfelt covenant meeting yesterday in the sanctuary with another strong turnout. We continue to work through misunderstandings and practice healthier communication with one another. We are reconnecting and actively listening and owning the part we individually play in the interactions we engage with each other, and we're enjoying our time together. So please join us for our next April 23rd meeting, Saturday at 1 o'clock in the sanctuary. Okay, we have an announcement from Susan Landau. Susan, would you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to announce that Tuesday is my middle granddaughter's birthday, Juniper. She will be turning 4, and I get to go to her birthday party.
Oh, yay. Wonderful. Yay.
Okay. Back to you, Janet.
Okay, thanks, Diane. Yeah, and welcome, Susan. Susan's addressing us all the way from Washington State. So next week, Dr. Stephen Lloyd Moffat will present Spiritual Nomads, a conscientious walk through the world's religions. As the treasurer of this year's board, I have a brief report on the March meeting held last Sunday. The February minutes were approved with corrections. The financial reports for the month of February showed $2,608 in gross revenue and $3,486 in expenditures. Although this resulted in a negative $877 for the month of February, the year-to-date net income is still at $9,132.08. The treasurer's report was approved and is available for review on the members-only page on the UUCC website. The board has called for a membership meeting to be held immediately after the April 10th service to discuss and vote on a referendum regarding a proposal to tent Arlington Square to address the termite infestation. Options for placing a welcoming sign situated near the corner of Arlington and Main were discussed, and board meeting visitor protocol was settled. Members or friends wishing to address the board must first make a request to the president. Visitors will be given up to 10 minutes at the start of the meeting to make their presentation. The next board meeting will be held on April 18th at 5 p.m. All are welcome to attend. Sharing together some of our personal and significant joys and concerns brings us closer as a faith community. We invite you to share the milestones that are deeply felt as part of your personal life. But please be mindful and considerate of all who come to worship with us this morning. This is a time of community building. We also encourage using this moment to express a gratitude or acknowledgement. If you have a joy or concern, please raise your hand. When Diane or I call your name, please stand or unmute yourself, then speak. Do we have any joys or concerns? Marianne, do you want to?
I'm overwhelmed with gratitude and joy for being able to share the tribute to Bruce Lloyd Cates last night. And I thank so many of you for showing up for this wonderful program of an amazing composer. Thank you so much for your support. He really was without words. He was blown away. So thank you.
Sorry.
Yes, this is Jan again. I have a candle of, it's weird, I don't know what it is of. It's joy and concern and everything else. My oldest son and his wife, who live in England, are taking in a Ukrainian family, a mother and her children. So I wish I could do it. Maybe we can here too. Please, thank you.
Do we have any other, Kathy?
Okay, for this season will be our last Sunday here. I turned into a crybaby. Anyway, I'll miss everyone. It's so great to be here with you.
I want to thank Laura for picking this Sunday to speak to us about Alzheimer's and dementia, because I'm on that journey myself right now with my aunt, and it's so timely. It's like a blessing. Thank you.
Okay. See no more hands. Diane, do we have any joys or concerns?
Yes, we do. Nancy and Robert, would you please unmute?
Good morning, this is Robert. I light a candle of concern in favor of world peace. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's all for today. Back to you, Janet.
Okay, thank you, Diane. The collective flames of these candles embody all the joys and sorrows which may have gone unspoken today, but are also deeply felt in this community. The first reading is titled Warning by Jenny Joseph. When I am an old woman, I shall wear purple, with a red hat which doesn't go and doesn't suit me, and I shall spend my pension on brandy and summer gloves and satin sandals and say we have no money for butter. I shall sit down on the pavement when I'm tired and gobble up samples in shops and press alarm bells and run my stick along the public railings and make up for the sobriety of my youth. I shall go out in slippers in the rain and pick flowers in other people's gardens and learn to spit. You can wear terrible shirts and grow more fat and eat 3 pounds of sausage at a go, or only bread and pickle for a week, and hoard pens and pencils and beer mats and things in boxes. But now we must have clothes that keep us dry and pay our rent and not swear in the street and set a good example for the children. We must have friends to dinner and read papers. But maybe I ought to practice a little now, so people who know me are not too shocked and surprised when suddenly I am old and start to wear purple. Knowing that we do not always live up to our best expectations of ourselves, let us in quietness seek the good within, which some call the inner light and some a spark of the divine. Knowing that we live in a society which falls far short of the ideal, let us in quietness resolve to do one thing this week to aid those suffering from want and injustice. Knowing that the earth is our home and that we have too often abused and poisoned it, let us in quietness consider how we might be part of making it more healthful for all living things. Knowing that each of us has some sorrow or anxiety hidden within, let us consider in quietness how we may reach out to one another with our smiles, our hand clasps, and our encouraging words. Are present in us, we send them outward, then that is truly prayer. Further, in sending love outward, we may notice a change in our own heart. The second reading is titled The Persistence of Memory by Julianne McAdam. Julianne is a retired middle school teacher and currently resides in Morro Bay. From the inane, be my baby, to the poetic, all the leaves are brown and the sky is gray, to the apocalyptic, we're on the eve of destruction. The lyrics and melodies are part of her neural circuitry. Song lyrics burned into her hormone-fueled teenage brain, hours spent on school buses with top 40 radio, school dances, slumber parties, 45s and LPs played until the grooves wore down. Now 50 years later, she still remembers all the lyrics, can sing along with all the songs. Music is, after all, the most effective therapy for dementia patients. Please stand if you are able to sing I Wish I Knew How, hymn number 151.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all these chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things I could say. Say 'em loud, say 'em clear, for the whole world to hear. Say 'em loud, say 'em clear, for the whole world to hear. I wish I could share all the love in my heart. I wish all the bars that still keep us apart. I wish you could know what it means to be me, though you'd see and agree everyone should be free. Then you'd see and agree everyone should be free. I wish I could give all I'm longing to give. I wish I could live like I'm longing to live. I wish I could do all the things I can do, though I'm way overdue. I'd be starting anew, though I'm way overdue. I'd be starting anew. I wish I could be like a bird in the sky. How sweet it would be if I found I could fly. I'd soar to the sun and look down at the sea. Then I'd sing 'cause I'd know how it feels to be free. Then I'd sing 'cause I'd know how it feels to be free.
Today's sermon is titled Dementia, Not a Normal Part of Aging, to be delivered by Laura DeLoye. Laura is the Program and Education Manager for the Alzheimer's Association of San Luis Obispo County. Laura coordinates groups, support groups, education, volunteers, information, and referrals, as well as care consultations. Laura has worked at all levels of care with older adults and caregivers for over 25 years as a board-certified music therapist, community coordinator, adult daycare center director, and nonprofit organization director. She has presented about music therapy and dementia at local, state, regional, and national conferences. Born and raised in Ohio, she also lived in North Carolina and has spent the past 11 years on the California Central Coast here in San Luis Obispo County. Please welcome Laura.
Good morning. Great to be here. So all of the music that I got to choose today, I loved going through the your hymnal because there's cool songs and there's songs that really I just wanted to hear you all sing and play. But they're also coordinated in with the talk today too. So thank you, Mary and Randy, for inviting me here today and for being able to be with you here in Cambria as well as on Zoom land. So wonderful. So I kind of doubt that you start your service many times with Rodgers and Hammerstein. I don't, probably a first, maybe, I don't know. So the story behind, and I said I had stories for each of the songs that were chosen. But Oh, What a Beautiful Morning is one of those songs that every time I hear it, I think of a woman named Flo, who I knew in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, when I worked at a retirement community. And she used to play piano for the silent movies. And so as her dementia, she was in assisted living part, it was a continuing care retirement community. So you'd move in independent care, and then as your needs, if they needed progressed, you would go through to, you could move into assisted living and in the health center. And so I worked in the health center with folks with dementia, and we wanted to just still be able to utilize her skills and her talents and help her stay connected. So she would come over once a week. Not sometimes she would forget which day she was supposed to come, so we do those reminders, but we worked with what was helpful, and her husband as well. And she would come over, and that would always be the start. She needed no music to play, which drives me nuts because that's how I play. But she would sit down and it would be flourishing. And I, so many times I could just imagine that she's like, there's a screen going on and I'm just going to accompany it. So she would start with "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning," which is a great tune. Like, we all know it. We can hum parts of it, learn the different lyrics. And then we'd get on to another song, and then it would go back into "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning" again, and we'd be like, okay. But what we needed to do was, and her playing was always beautiful, but you could start to see some of the other residents were like, and so we would cue her, but work with her in that space. It wouldn't be the, hey, you know what, could you get on with something else, right? We weren't taking that kind of approach. So obviously, if you didn't realize, she had dementia, so she was in the early stages, but still very, very independent, and it kind of comes and goes. And then she would tell stories and things like that. So that was the all the sounds of the earth are like music, and it was just being able to bring her into that space and still have that useful, the need. Like, we all wake up with needing to have a purpose in our life, so that was part of that. But that really, I just, the point of meeting a person where they are, it's great if we do that all through our lives, but particularly within dementia, it's an important aspect, because we're the ones who are able to change and adapt a person with dementia, the disease process that's happening. They're not able to do that as well. So I'm going to start off with, I do have a few slides. So dementia, if you don't know, just to get everybody on the kind of same page, it's an umbrella term, and it's different symptoms that it's more than just forgetting somebody's name, right? It's more than, oh, I missed that appointment. So we'll go into some of those warning signs today too. So it's the decline in cognition and in language, problem solving, those kinds of things, attention span. And then, so I work with the Alzheimer's Association, and it's a little bit of a misnomer, dementia. It could be somebody who has Lewy body dementia or vascular dementia, frontal temporal dementia. In the Alzheimer's Association, we help anyone who's in that space. We primarily work with caregivers to help support, educate about those processes, help to problem solve with them things that are going on. So within dementia, we go through, if you could, next slide. We're going on to that. Yeah, there we go. So Alzheimer's disease is, we use that interchangeably, again, because dementia is that umbrella, but particularly within Alzheimer's, it's the most prevalent disease that has the symptoms of dementia. So that's why we oftentimes will just note Alzheimer's disease. Our risk factors, people many times, well, how can I not get it, right? It's not contagious. It will tell you that's a myth. It's not contagious. It is a disease as we age. So that is our number one risk factor. So we all are at risk of that. Gratefully, we're still aging. But then also family history, it does increase our risk. It does not mean that you're going to get it. My dad had dementia. I had a grandfather who had dementia. Those increase my risk, but it doesn't mean that I will get it. There are some, there's a younger onset dementia, which is prior to age 65, if you're diagnosed with that. that does have a more hereditary component to it, a more genetic factor to that. And there you can go through genetic testing and things like that, but certainly do that with a genetic counselor, because there's a lot of stuff that can affect us in that realm. Lifestyle factors, a big part of, how do we work to prevent dementia? A lot of times we talk about our diet is important, right? So what's good for the heart is good for the brain. They work in conjunction to make the whole body function. And so that type of the Mediterranean diets, right? The good oils, the heart healthy types of diets are really good. Smoking, not so great. Decreases the capacity for both our heart function and our brain functions. Exercise, social interactions. It's been a very difficult time over COVID. We know that for many reasons, but we have seen an increase in the symptoms of dementia for folks who have had already been showing signs and symptoms of dementia or Alzheimer's disease. Those have increased, as well as just it's a vulnerable population. So the death rate, unfortunately, has been higher too. But Alzheimer's and dementia, it's not a normal part of aging. So it is a disease, just like, cancers and cardiac heart failure, all of those type diabetes, they're all different diseases. So dementia is a disease of the brain. And many times we think, oh, she's just stubborn, or he's just always been forgetful. And yes, that is true. But it is not only, there's that difference between mental health and dementia, and trying to say, okay, where do they intertwine? There can be symptoms certainly of within dementia. Depression is not uncommon, so those can go hand in hand. Just kind of working through some of those types of things. Let's see what else. Some other risk factors too. People of color, unfortunately, are at a higher risk for developing Alzheimer's disease. Those who are African American are 2 times as likely, and those who are Latino descent are 1.5 times likely. We're not certain why that is exactly. A lot of it has to do with health disparities and access to care, for sure, but also continuing to look into that and research-wise. So the Alzheimer's Association is a national nonprofit organization with different chapters throughout the county or country. So I'm the programs and education person for San Luis Obispo County, but I'm part of the California Central Coast chapter, which includes SLO, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. So there are a couple of other chapters throughout the state. So if you have a loved one in another state and you're like, I'm kind of concerned about my uncle, and is there somebody that we can help them turn to locally? Yes, there is. So certainly feel free to contact me. Also want to take the time. I do have some flyers at the entrance over there, and we can get information to y'all on Zoom as well. But I'm here. I'm available. Let me know if there's ever any questions that you have in that realm. And I think we can take some time after the service today too. But I want to go. So if we go to the next slide, go through our 10 warning signs. These are too small a print in here, I guess. And again, you can find these online at alz.org is our national website. But these are 10 warning signs. There's some great brochures back there as well, that talk about, what's the difference? Is this dementia or is it just normal aging? Because as we age, we have a larger Rolodex of information that's in our head, right? And so it takes sometimes a little bit of time to figure out what was that memory whenever I was 30 and we did some, right? So there is some of that. But really, these 10 warning signs, it's all about is it really disrupt? Like, is there something that's disrupting your general daily life, right? So memory that disrupts daily life. If you forget somebody's name when you see them in the grocery store because you were trying to remember your list of 5 things that you wanted to get so that you could go home and make dinner for your friends who were coming over that night and you were going to go on a trip the next day, there's a lot that you're trying to process, right? So seeing somebody in the grocery aisle and being like, oh my gosh, I totally forget their name. Oh my gosh, is it dementia? Probably not. Right now, if you forget names of, continually, of those who are close to you, just those kinds of thoughts. So it is, but not unusual to forget names. When you, I will say too, within those risk factors and dementia, we just had the 2022 facts and figures came out for the Alzheimer's Association, and we are at in older adults. And this is as dementia increase, or as we age, our risk for dementia increases, basically 1% every year past 65. So every 5 years, a little bit higher increase for possibility of dementia. So really by the time we're 90 years old, 1 in 3 will have dementia. It doesn't mean that we're all in the late stages at that point in time, right? And so that's been part of the trajectory, is trying to offset any symptoms to later in life. So and we are living longer, but it's, if we can make it to 90 and we're just starting to have some memory loss or some attention issues or problem solving difficulties, then if we have 10 years of that is different than if we have 30 years of that. So that's part of that, the process of our association's research and things along that lines. Challenges in problem solving, or planning and or problem solving. We all make different occasional errors, whether that's managing finances or it's like, oh my gosh, it's already almost the 30th. I forgot to pay that on the 20th when it was due, right? Those things happen. Gratefully, we do have those reminders that we can have automatic payments happen online now and those types of things. But when you, may go into a relative's home and there's a lot of disarray and it's like, oh my gosh, there are things that should have been happening in January and they had no recollection of that. There's some cause for concern. And again, these are 10 warning signs. It's not diagnosing. So just always want to be clear on that. Difficulty completing familiar tasks. Somebody is making their famous cake that they bring to all of the potluck functions. And, sometimes we can misplace something, leave out an ingredient, but whenever it's like, oh, wow, I put in a cup of baking soda instead of a cup of sugar, those kinds of things. Or when it's like really different, those are oftentimes whenever you're noticing in the changes of baking or driving. This is where driving in dementia is an issue, because there's a lot, as you see, like not only the completing a familiar task and going from point A to point B, but then also confusion with time or place. Driving is not always, there's a reaction time whenever, as well as, oh yeah, I should turn left into here. No, that's a one-way street. You should not do that. Right. So those can be things like that. Also, trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. Like if you think about this disease that's happening in the brain, it's plaques and tangles that are changing the those neural pathways and those connections. And so it's also affecting our vision and our proprioceptive space. Like, where are we in time and space? Like if I look at this and I don't, I could misstep for sure. But if I had dementia and I'm looking at something, there's a light strip here, I might not want to step on that because it's very visual. It's very good for me right now because I can see there's a difference. But with somebody with dementia, that could be a visual change, and you might not want to, you might think that, oh, that's a hole or a crevice. And so you might do a big, huge step down. And it's like, no, actually you didn't need to do that. But those visual things change. So if you think about that within driving, our reaction time at a stop sign, very different. So it's more than just getting lost, right? So that's considering things to think about. Or I know I spoke with a caregiver the other day and she's like, yeah, we wanted to drive from Orange County to San Luis Obispo. And I was like, but if my uncle is along, we need to drive 50 miles an hour because he can't deal with that going fast kind of thing, that feeling. New words, language, speaking, writing difficulties. You know, if somebody is reading one page of a book and they turn it and they're like, wow, I have no idea what I read on that first page. We can all do that, again, depending on how many balls we're juggling in the air at a time. But if that's a continual thing, making up different words for commonplace things. Again, we all misplace things, but you know, they're the classic, if your keys are in the freezer and you had no idea, you couldn't retrace that step, you know, just things to concern about. Again, the poor judgment, particularly in driving, if you think about how much we need to make quick judgments, those are concerns. Withdrawal from work or social activities, that's a big one. You know, and it's like, oh, well, you know, my husband didn't want, he just doesn't want to go out anymore. Like, I don't know if it's just because we've been in COVID and now we're used to not being around people, but there can be that withdrawal because if you're having difficulty with all of those other things, right? All of the other things on that list, as well as, you know, just that uneasiness, everything has the possibility to be confusing. And if you're forgetting names, if you're not able to track a conversation, yeah, I don't want to go out and be made a fool of, right? I don't want to look strange, or I want to keep up with things. So that can be a withdrawal. And there's always reasons behind it. That's you know, just kind of recognizing these types of warning signs. So next slide. And this I just think is a big, because you all are together, you know each other, you know, our family and our friends are often the first ones to notice those changes. Going back to the reading of When I Am Old, I Shall Wear Purple. You know, some of us are just quirky and we wear purple. Purple happens to be the color of the Alzheimer's Association, but you know, for those of us who, yeah, you know, I'm getting older, and so I want to be me. You know, we work out of those constructs that we grew up in, but still knowing the dignity of each other. And if something is a little bit awry, we get to, you know, it's not so much as like, oh my God, what's going on with them? You all work with the dignity of each other. Like that is what brings you together in this space. So it's a good, you know, community to be able to say, okay, I wonder what's happening. Can I help out? How do I do that? So next slide. So yeah, this is small print, my apologies. So really this is like, okay, if I notice some 10 signs of some of those, like, what do I do? Certainly have a conversation, you know, kind of assess it, maybe talk with, you know, if it's in a family, maybe talk with, if you have children, hey, have you been noticing anything different in mom? What's going on? And just being able to be open about it. That's a big part of what I do as far as education, and what our volunteers do is helping to decrease a stigma, because it's like, oh, they're just getting old, they're getting crazy, you know, and that's not the only thing, you know. And again, like I always go back to, you know, my former client Flo, who it's like helping to find a purpose and helping to find, are there other things that are going on? You know, because it's not always dementia, just because we're having forgetfulness. I mean, there could be an infection that's happening. There could be low B12 levels. There could be dehydration. Those all really throw things off. It could be something else that's happening with one of our body systems, right? So really thinking about that, what else is going on? And again, like we're still coming out of a pandemic. There's been a lot of change, a lot of, you know, whether people have moved or people have died or people have, you know, changed your life. Those are big issues. So then certainly being able to have a conversation, really highly recommend do not argue. There's an acronym, DARE. So whenever you're working with a person with dementia or talking with them, do not argue, reason, or explain. Those aren't going to get you anywhere, right? Because of all of those 10 warning signs, all of that cognition that's just starting to be differently functioning. So have a conversation when it's an easy time, not when it's like, oh my God, you're driving me nuts again, and let's talk about this, right? Not the time to have a conversation. I think overall, never a time to have a conversation, but particularly within dementia, because there's that increase. And if you're seeing an increase in anxiety, it's like, okay, let's, you know, kind of downplay it, move on, come back to it at another time. And I'll get back into music because there was a situation that was shared this morning that, you know, being able to utilize music, that is a great time. It does open up our emotional space. It helps to connect with our memories of the past. It provides a calm or an energetic space, depending on what music you use. But being able to, you know, listen to a music or sing something together, or, you know, if a person is a dancer, dance and move. But those are great ways to engage, help kind of create a nice little bubble of a space, and then have a conversation, and reach out for support. So certainly, you know, turning to the Alzheimer's Association, whether that's me, a volunteer, or another chapter, just please do that. We've got an amazing amount of resources, and just, I've been working for the association about 2.5 years, and that's something that I have always turned to with the Alzheimer's Association over the work that I've done. But it's so great because it's available. And then see a doctor, you know, checking in, like I said, with those vitamin levels, with the dehydration, with any other infections that might be going on. Next slide. So this is just a slide of my information. And again, we can certainly get this to folks on Zoom, but it's also recorded. My office is in San Luis Obispo. We do have here in Cambria, we've got a couple of support groups that are happening at the Cambria Galleria. The first and third Mondays from 3:30 to 5, there's a caregiver support group. And so we have those going throughout the county. We are back in person, yay. Because that was something that happened. We didn't switch to not offering any programs, but we did move everything online. So we do have some support groups that will remain virtual. We've got some that are in person. Our local website is the CA Central Coast after alz.org. Yeah, and let's see, I think I covered everything. I should like double check my little. So yes, that is, I guess just to encourage folks to, you know, be supportive, knowing that we don't have a cure currently. We have medications that can help to offset symptoms at this point, and working together. And I appreciate just being able to present to you all, and knowing that 1 in 3 later on in life, you know, that's tough to look at it just in this room as well as on Zoom. But, you know, we're here to support each other, and there are ways to communicate, and how do we interact, and learning those types of things. So Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
The morning offering will now be given and received. As a reminder, today is fourth Sunday and will be our last collection this year for the food bank. Please keep in mind that this congregation is entirely self-governed by the democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all of the financial support for the many ministries from amongst ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and institutional well-being. You are invited to participate in the blessing of giving. For those at home, please use one of the methods shown on the screen. Thank you. Our thanks for all gifts given and received for the work of this community. Let us now sing the doxology.
From all that dwell below the skies, let faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land by every tongue.
Please stand if you are able to sing the closing hymn, How Can I Keep From Singing, number 108.
My life goes on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars, I know the truth it liveth. What though the darkness round me close, songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. It sounds an echo earth. How can I keep from singing when tyrants tremble round the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near? How can I keep
seated. Let us now recite the valediction. We extinguish the flame of this chalice, and we know that the light of truth and love and the warmth of this community go with us until we meet again. Please extinguish your chalice at home now. After the benediction, please click on the gallery view button in the upper right corner of your screen, but please remain muted. Diane or Laura in the sanctuary will call on you when you raise your hand. Laura?
Thank you again. And I would just like to say, may your day be beautiful and may you be present with one another. May you never keep from singing and encourage others to share the music within. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions out there that anyone would like to ask from the sanctuary?
Yes. Mary has a question
I
here.
do, and I'll come to my mic. Yes, several years ago when we lived in Southern California, both Randy and I sang with a group that they called them Cup of Water, and they'd go out to all the nursing homes in Orange County and LA County. We were all over the place. We'd take time off work to go do these little musicals that were like an hour long. They always had a happy ending. We rewrote them. But in some of those places, the people were really in dire shape. Some closed facilities, some not closed. You made a statement about people of color getting Alzheimer's and dementia at a higher rate. Mm-hmm. The majority of people in these nursing homes were white. So is that because the people of color are being cared for in their homes, or what happens to them? I mean, just answer that.
Right. Yeah, excellent. And thank you for sharing the music in that in the facilities as well. Yeah, I mean, it certainly depends on where we live. SLO County, we don't have a lot of folks of color who are in our facilities. Right, and then in LA. Right, so culturally, particularly I know more here within the Latino population, very much caring at home. And that's not an unusual, if they were in their native country, it would be the entire family that's caring together. So that is not unusual. There's also, being in facility is an expensive space, so there is also some of that as well. I know when I worked in North Carolina, we had a large African American population, and so it was usually about half and half as far as different folks who are in the facilities. But certainly there is a lot of care at home, and so that's a big part of what we do with the Alzheimer's Association, is working with caregivers, typically the non-professional caregivers, family caregivers who are at home, and helping to understand what does that mean? Because it's 24 hours care at points whenever, as dementia progresses, because you can't leave somebody home. There's safety reasons, will they wander, and those types of things. So, and we have, I've talked with some families, and it's like, nope, never going to take mom or dad to a nursing home. And my parents have been the same way. It's like, okay, however, I also know that if my parents had gone to a facility, they would have had much more social engagement than what they were getting in their home out in the country in Ohio. But yeah, that answers. Yeah, the back. Yeah.
It's a much needed topic to bring up with our age group. And I'd just like to mention Miles' former wife.
Yeah. 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 So she was sharing that Lyle's former wife had dementia for a number of years, and earlier onset, it sounds like, and just difficult in that space. So appreciate bringing up the topic in this space too. Yeah. Thanks. Yes.
We have a friend and neighbor who got into the paradigm of early onset when she was about 60. Is the treatment any different?
Yeah, so had a neighbor who got into, sounds like a paradigm of dementia at about age 50, and is the treatment any different? Typically, I'll say this typically, because one person with dementia is one person with dementia. Because if you think about, each of us has a very different, even though our brains are, we have the lobes and all of that placement, but it's very different from what our experiences are. Oftentimes the early onset is a faster progressing process. As far as a treatment, there's a lot, I guess I would say there's typically a lot of, seems a lot more emotional involvement, because you can have children involved, who are, whether young adults or still teenagers, and then also parents are still alive, and that's a difficult space at times too. So as far as like medication, I think still a lot of the same types of medications to offset symptoms. So there are some drugs like Aricept, Namenda, and then there's combinations of those. There is, if you've paid attention to the news in the last year, there's a drug called Aduhelm that is out. It's been controversial because it did get approved through FDA, but it's not covered by Medicare at this point in time. And they have, I know there's a whole lot of stuff, and I don't always like to open that can of worms, but it's there. And what's really exciting, it's not the end all be all to Alzheimer's disease. It wasn't meant to be that. It's not been ever marketed like that. It's really for very early stages of dementia, where that mild cognitive loss is happening, and almost more before we're really diagnosing dementia, because it can take a while to rule out things, as well as for us to like actually go to a doctor and get any kind of assistance in that. But Aduhelm does have, its family of drugs that it's a part of has great potential for a future in changing the possibility of finding a cure. So I think like a lot of the same, no matter what age, but there are a lot of different issues that come whether you're 50 years old or 85 years old.
I'm assuming maintaining social connections is important.
Yeah, maintaining social connections are great. Definitely, because it's that stimulation, so it's, and there's a lot of like brain games and things like that. Certainly helpful. Again, it's not going to cure it. Coconut oil is not going to cure it. Ginkgo biloba is not going to cure it. Those are like, it also means, it's those myths, right, that we build up. Not every person with dementia is going to be an angry person with dementia, right? And so much of that is an approach, and that's what I teach a lot about whenever we have education classes too.
We have 3 questions too out here in Zoom land.
Okay, let's go one to Zoom land. We got one more over here too.
Okay, Kat, would you unmute, please?
Thank you, Laura, for being here today. My mother developed, I was interested in that first slide that you showed, the 4 causes of dementia. I believe hers was vascular. Nobody ever mentioned the word Alzheimer's. So it's interesting the way that was broken down. She might have been hiding it for a couple of years, but 86 was the age that we think, was full on and progressively worse until she died at 93. That was 2 years ago. But I'm just curious, is there severity in those, in that list? I mean, is some of it more severe?
Hmm.
Or is it all kind of, I mean, it has to be different or you wouldn't have mentioned it.
Right. Yeah. So it's different diseases. Thank you for that question. And blessings to you for your mom as well and caring for her. So different diseases have the symptoms of dementia. So I listed those four. It was Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, and frontal temporal dementia. There are another like additional 50 diseases too. So we just don't list them all out. Those are the four most common. Alzheimer's with the most prevalent of diseases, and vascular dementia, as it says, it has to do with the heart. So oftentimes you may have known it previously as like multi-infarct dementia, those little tiny strokes that happen. Or it used to be hardening of the arteries, that type of thing. So in that, certainly, again, that's that heart and brain connection that happens. And so, if you think about if our heart isn't pumping blood correctly to our brain, then we're going to have damage that happens in that. So, and there are different symptoms that occur. Lewy body dementia is very much more like a Parkinson's-like presentation. So there can be some difficulty with our walking, with our gait, and more hallucinations, suspicion, kinds of things like that are more typical in a Lewy body dementia. Frontal temporal dementia has, as it says, it's affecting more of the frontal and the temporal lobes of our brain. And so a lot of that executive functioning, those, what we usually have as pretty simple filters that we don't always think about, that are more affected. And it's not so much the forgetfulness of memory of like names and places, it becomes more behavior and mood changes in frontal temporal. So yes, each type of dementia has a whole lot of other things with it, but there are a lot of classic symptoms that happen within it too.
Okay, Susan, would you please unmute yourself?
Okay, I'm not sure if you have an answer for this one, but
All right.
I just got back from Southern California. I was down there last week for my mother's 103rd birthday.
Wow.
And when my dad died 13 years ago, she kind of spun into dementia rather quickly and then Alzheimer's. And so she has, I'm not sure she even knows who we are. I get a sense that she just kind of knows we belong to her somehow, my sister and I.
Yeah.
But I sometimes wonder when I sit there with her, because she can't put a sentence together anymore. All she does is basically moan. Once in a while, she'll get out a couple of words, but I wonder if she's able to think clearly. And I don't know if anybody has the answer to that question. I don't know if she knows, if she has the cognitive ability to know what's going on and to be able to think, but just can't express herself. Do you know?
I can't necessarily give you a definitive on that, but it is, just as our brain, as those processes and those neural connections are breaking down because of the plaques that are building up on the neurons and the tangles that are happening, like it takes a lot longer to get from point A to point B. You're not just making that connector. It's like you're going up here and down there. It wouldn't be going from Cambria to Paso. It would be going from Cambria down to Los Osos. And then, let's go over to Slow and then maybe down to Lompoc. And then let's go back up to Paso, right? So it's that kind of, sometimes it can get to it eventually. As the dementia progresses, so typically there are, like, depending on which scale you're using, like 5 or 7 stages of dementia. We typically refer just generally to early, middle, and late stages. And so in the later stages, it is said that, they're not able to process at all anymore. And at the same time, I have seen it personally, and I know many people here have as well. If you're connecting with music, or if you're connecting with poetry, or you're connecting with something that is scented that they've always loved, sometimes a voice will bring that recognition. You'll see it in their eyes connecting, or maybe a little shift of their body positioning. So are they able to process that and think like they used to? Probably not. But is there some type of, human to human connection and memory somewhere in there? I think so, yeah. And it's really those late, like really earlier memories that remain intact. So the poem that was read was actually, it was built around these songs where it's like the woman was remembering, be my baby, be my little baby, right? And remembering like dancing to that as a teenager, and then those kinds of connections. So, and then thinking about yourself too, Susan, is that, your mom may be looking at you and not necessarily seeing you as her daughter, but maybe seeing you as her sister or her mother, because you're not 5 years old as to how she might be remembering you. Which is a tough thing for us as caregivers and people in those lives, because it's like, but mom, I've lived for 60 years. How can you weren't a part of any of those memories? She was, it's just very different in that. So, yeah. But I think so many times being able to still hear our voices, having some of those usual catchphrases also can be really, really neat. That makes that connection. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sue Davis, would you please unmute?
Welcome back.
Yes, that age thing that Susan was talking about, I found it very comforting to be able to join my mom as she transgressed to former ages. And I remember asking her how old she was at one point, and she was 21, and that's what we spent.
Yeah.
In 21 of mom. So if you can join them in that. But I think, the difficult part for me was knowing when to transition to 24/7 care, and the dangers that were involved with someone who wandered. And for my dad, it was very hard to give her up, and we waited too long. So that idea of staying in your own home forever sometimes doesn't work so well. And also knowing that, knowing a lot of people in other countries are paid family members to stay and care for those people. I hope that we would someday work towards that, because it really, really is expensive, and only really wealthy people can afford really good care is the bottom line.
Yes, thank you for that, Sue. Certainly. And it is exactly what you said, being able to join a person with dementia in their reality. Whenever I started working in the field of older adult care 25 or 30 years ago, we were still very much in that reality orientation. We would, I worked in an activities department, so we had the board of today is, and it's the date, and this is the weather, and people would be like, you've got the air conditioning on and it's cold in here, obviously it's going to be November. No, it was actually July because it was hot, so it's like that wasn't really working, but that was what we knew at that time. But certainly being able to meet the person where they are, not arguing, again, that don't argue, reason, or explain, it'll get you a long way with a person with dementia, because and then being able to come back, for us not taking it personally, that's part of like understanding that they're going to forget, but we're going to hold on to that. Oh, they just frustrated me, or, oh, it's tough. Yeah. I know there's a question here.
Yeah, speaking of caregivers, my husband and I volunteered over in Hawaii, over at the Highland Kua, and we play music for those people there. My problem is that I'm an empath and I go home and cry. And I thought, if anything ever happened to my husband, what would I do as a possible caregiver? And you talked so much about that. I think this might be a good way to conclude. What's available for people as those who have loved ones who are sick, who maybe are not able to? Are there support groups for these people as well?
Yeah, care for the caregivers. Yeah, that's I find that too. There are some weeks for sure that are so difficult because you listen all the time, and we support and give resources and things. I think we don't have right now, like in this area, care support groups for the caregiver, like caregivers of caregivers, right? We do have support groups, which are amazing. And I will be honest, like, before I started working for the Alzheimer's Association, I'd never been to a support group. I have had different things in life where it's like, oh, there were possibilities, but I was like, oh, I don't want to go and hear somebody complain about stuff, right? But what I have seen, and particularly through this time that we've been online in COVID, is that support of one another and knowing that we're going through things together. And it's like, and some people will come out and be like, oh, well, my loved one's not that bad, or, oh, wow, mine's really, further along, but I'm glad that I have that connection there. Our support group facilitator here, some of you probably know Dr. Dennis Pizzato. That's not you, because he had spent time in Hawaii too. So I was like, well, maybe. But he does a lot of that caring for the caregiver. Like, that's one of his components in space and time. And we need to do more of that. I think it's being able to connect with like each other like this, and knowing that we're here and doing those similar kinds of things, like whether we're working with older adults or kids, and all of those different things. It's not coming through yet, but I'm hopeful that no matter what, we'll have something that comes out of it. We are working with Hospice of SLO County and doing some of that in that compassion fatigue, and anticipatory grief, which is a huge part of dementia, because you're losing parts of a person as they're still here and present. And so those types of things. There is a compassion fatigue support group that I will take. Sorry, I actually have been involved in that, but I forgot that those. But the Hospice SLO has started a compassion fatigue support group for first responders. Part of it has been through the pandemic space, where we've all been giving and not being able to connect with each other in that same sense of a hug. Like, so many times that can help. But yeah, and they meet on the first Friday of each month at noon for an hour and a half, and it's via Zoom. So there are people from not just here in SLO County.
We need to wrap up, but we've got one more question from Lou. Would you unmute, please?
Hi, thanks. That was really a nice presentation. Thank you. My mother died of early onset Alzheimer's in our early 60s. And it was particularly tragic because she was, only a few years before, she was at the peak of her career. And when she was giving scientific presentations, she realized something was wrong. And so she had to stop working fairly quickly, and fairly quickly got to the point where she had to go into a facility because my father was personality-wise not capable of taking care of her for very long. And my siblings and I were all, mid-career and didn't live anywhere close to her. But she had 4 siblings, 2 men and 2 women. And the women both developed what I would call late onset. I can't remember how old they were, but up to around 80. And neither of the men did. And is there any evidence that it's or can be sex linked?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for sharing that. And that's, and I imagine that's difficult too for you, and knowing that you've had several relatives who have dementia, and how do you continue to keep it at bay? Yes, women are affected more often than men, and women are more caregivers too. So they're not quite sure. I mean, part of it is women do live longer, but there's a lot more involved in than that. I mean, I think they're trying to figure out like some hormonal changes as well, like through menopause and such too. But we're not sure. But yeah, there are more women are affected.
My sister is definitely not affected. She's going stronger than she ever has. She's 69. So
Great. Yeah. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You bet.